Podcasts, the final frontier. These are the voyages of the podcast.
There are 4 lights!
Its 5-year mission to explore strange, familiar worlds, to seek out new listeners and new civilizations, to boldly go where most nerds have gone before. Join Matt and Shirley on their 5-year mission with a different guest each week as they talk about an episode of Star Trek, from the original series through Enterprise. They'll cover every episode, eventually.
Hi everybody and welcome back to There Are 4 Lights. I'm Matt and I'm here with Shirley.
Hello.
And this week we're joined by George Chimples of Lizard People Dear Readers.
Howdy.
George, how's it going?
It's going all right. How you doing?
No, not too bad. George, tell us a little bit about Lizard People. It's been a couple of months since we've heard about them.
Yeah, Lizard People we do. It's a science fiction and fantasy book podcast. We basically split our episodes. Half of the time we're talking about books that we've read, what we call our book club episodes. So it's, like William Gibson, a whole bit Octavia Butler, new releases, old releases, good stuff. Anything that we feel is kind of significant or interesting. Do a little bit of reviews. And then we alternate also with what we call Culture Club episodes, where we'll talk about what video games we're playing, music we're listening to, TV shows we're watching, movies we've seen, and just kind of go on from there. So you can find us lizardpeopledearreaders.com, on Twitter at drlizardpeople. We've also post our stuff at Major Spoilers. Let's find us all sorts of places like that.
And George, how are the reptilian Illuminati overlords handling their Republican candidate falling out?
I mean, it's been tough out there. I would like to dispel rumors about Ted Cruz. Some people think that he's a lizard person. I can assure you that he is not, in fact, human, but he is not one of ours. He is something else entirely. I've got my own suspicions. I'm not allowed to directly confirm nor deny anything other than to say he is not, in fact, a lizard person. So stop asking about that. But we've had a lot of setbacks in this go around. We're looking to really pick it up in November and get some stuff done. And we'll be out there, underneath the earth, flying saucers at night and shooting mental ray guns into people's brains to, get this thing happening for us. So go Lizard People. November 2011, we're gonna get it done. Excellent.
All right. So this week we're talking about the original series episode Space Seed. It's a pretty big one. That's pretty important for future Star Trek.
Yeah.
Yes.
So Shirley, why don't you read us the intro there, and we'll get into it.
Okay. Ricardo Montalban as guest stars as Khan as a survivor of a tyrannical super race in Space Seed, a drama in which Captain Kirk and his crew are unwitting accomplices to an attempt to seize world power. Found aboard an ancient and floundering cargo vessel with his body in the state of suspended animation, Khan is allowed to convalesce on the USS Enterprise. Suspicions of Khan's true identity, Kirk and Spock soon determine their patient is one of a group of scientifically bred super beings bent on world domination and sorry. I thought it said it put him underground. Sorry, bent on world domination and put him under guard. With the aid of a sympathetic crew member, Marla, who is the historian for the for the Enterprise, who has fallen in love with him, Khan escapes, wrests command of the Enterprise, and threatens the entire ship's complement with execution.
So,
whoa,
there's a lot here. This is a really important episode for lots of future, it turns out, of Star Trek. It actually kind of ripples through 2 other series. Yeah. So Enterprise and Next Generation have a pretty big ripple effect there. George, is this your first time watching Space Seed?
No, I've seen it a couple times. It's an episode I like a lot because, like you said, it basically sets up also most of the original series movies.
Yeah, absolutely.
2, 3, and 4 are all stemming from the events of this episode, which is interesting because I don't think any of the other movies really directly key off of stuff that happened in the series, for the original series at least.
We see some returning villains in, like Generations, Betor and Lursa come back. The whole Shinzon Romulan thing was kind of a build-up, but not directly involving any one character. That was kind of interesting, but not directly linked like this. And then it is revealed in Enterprise that Noonien Singh is actually not Khan's real last name. It was the name given to him by his genetic engineer.
Oh, do they do that because he's clearly not actually, North Indian or Sikh, as they say?
Yes,
Right.
But they also use it to tie in Lieutenant Commander Data into the Khan Noonien Singh or Noonien Soong story. And there's some stuff in Enterprise, and then by correlation, some stuff in Next Generation that has a lot to do with this right here. Plus, like you said, the movies. It's a pretty powerful episode. Really, the thing that stuck out to me the most out of this whole episode was how much this felt like Star Trek. It felt like this was the first one they got everything right. Nothing was quite off. Everything felt, from start to finish, like Star Trek. Like there wasn't anything that was missing.
One thing was off for me, and not in a bad way. But I think that, like, my response immediately after it ended, rewatching it this time, was Star Trek was purposely, meant to be positive and progressive and present an optimistic view of the future to a certain extent. And the episode itself ends on a real downer, like it's just like that chilling kind of thing of, I wonder, that's where the episode title actually, it only makes sense at the end. Well, what have you sown? What will grow there in 100 years? And it could be positive, but it also could be very bad. And then knowing how that follows up in Wrath of Khan, it's not good.
Yeah.
Right.
So, and that thing, it's a little bit more of a downer ending, but yeah, otherwise it's got, all of the stuff, Kirk, Spock, and Bones all have great interplay. There's a mixture of, philosophy and a little bit of action, and Kirk is really, really good in the episode.
Yeah.
And it's funny that you mention how, I guess I would call it bleak, the episode is, because when I was reading the TOS book that you got us, it says that this episode, despite how well written it was, is one of the only episodes, or the first episode, that breaks from the pattern of all the Star Trek episodes in projecting a bleak future for mankind.
Yeah.
Well, at least in the 1990s.
Yeah. Well, and we didn't really get interplanetary travel until 2018, so that's something to look forward to. Right. A couple of years, NASA needs to get on top of that.
Right. And, the book said that it was an episode that just basically presented a very bleak history and possible bleak future, one that could possibly be filled with war and despair.
Well, but at the same time, I don't disagree with that, but at the same time, you're looking at a future that they're saying, yes, things are going to get bad, but they're going to get better as well. So we're seeing the 1990s as this terrible eugenics war, but the turnaround is we get Star Trek from it. We get this utopian future.
Yeah, it'd be like in the Enlightenment or in the Renaissance, looking back on the Crusades and the Dark Ages or something like that. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
For them, it's not quite ancient history, but there's a great moment in the episode that I loved where they first figure out, okay, so this Khan is the Khan Noonien Singh. This is the guy, and like Scotty and Kirk and Bones all are kind of like, he did bad things, but we all kind of admire him because he was, he wasn't the worst guy. He wasn't a Hitler. He definitely was kind of a bad guy, but he also, was a daring fellow. And they talk about how, what does Kirk say? There's a little bit of barbarism in all of us, and they admire his strength and they admire certain aspects of him. I think that's a really fascinating, interesting character beat that, they look back on it like, well, it sucked, but he was also an interesting guy that had some, worthy traits. And that comes through also in when you have Khan on screen, like Ricardo Montalban does a tremendous performance, but he is very much like he's kind of monstrous in some respects, but he's also still very charismatic and very compelling and interesting. And so he does a good job of making it kind of giving the character depth. And you can understand why some people would follow him, but you could also be like, this guy's also totally scary. Really good job.
Yeah, he was downright terrifying. He was a little over the top at some points, but it was a fun and interesting and enjoyable over the top, not cringeworthy. Yeah. So that was really important. I other than Wrath of Khan, I've never seen Ricardo Montalban in anything.
His big thing was Fantasy Island, which I didn't really watch.
Yeah.
So, but he's good.
You never watched Fantasy Island?
I was on before I was born, and by the time I was born, it probably was considered too adult for me to watch in reruns. But I was, born 5 years after it started, so
right.
I mean, by that time, if I had remembered it, it probably wouldn't have been on TV anymore. There was a lot of Gilligan's Island reruns instead. So, no, I really like the episode. I like that Kirk gets a respect from Khan, but at the same time, Khan still believes himself to be completely superior in every way.
Yeah.
So that's helpful. It is good to see Khan played as a purely politically minded man and played well that way. It's not comical in any way, shape, or form. He's treated with a lot of respect. The character, the concept is treated with a lot of respect here. And I didn't realize there were that many people that died from the Botany Bay, because they had 85 to begin with. They were down to 73. And then by the time we see them again in Wrath of Khan, just a little bit of spoilers, I think there's 15 of them.
Yeah, like between 15 and 25. It's less than 30, it looks like.
Off on the planet.
Yeah, so, I mean, it's interesting to see that progression and see the impact there. Was there anything else, Shirley, that stuck out to you specifically here? I don't know. The only other thing that was a little weird was McGivens. Lieutenant McGivens fell in love with him awful quick.
Well, I mean...
But I guess I don't know. Go ahead. What were you saying?
I don't know. I can't remember if it was the Doctor or if it was Spock or somebody. No, not Spock. It wouldn't have been Spock. I don't remember what they said, but it was the Doctor, and he was talking about what type of magnetism he had. Mm-hmm. And if you think about hormones and DNA and pheromones and things like that, if he was created as a superhuman person, all of those things would have probably been upped. So in certain, physiological, chemical situations, if you hit the right person, they're going to be super attracted. So you think
maybe it was her baser instincts, seeing a perfect mate. That's what caught there,
or just that because of the way that he was however he was enhanced, whatever, mm-hmm. He put out that quote unquote signal or the pheromones or whatever it is that that affect other people more because. I walk into a room and I'm not attracted to every person there. There's got to be certain, whatever, interesting qualities or whatever. So
I think there's also her being the historian that she's also predisposed to be interested in him mm-hmm. because she, when we first introduced to her, she's about to start painting, finish a painting of a gladiator. She's all these paintings that she's done of strong male figures from history that. Khan later comments on. So there's like Napoleon and Caesar and all of these people. And she remarks to Kirk, that she has an interest in these men because they're bold and more adventurous and more, maybe more stereotypically masculine than the people in the, 22nd century, 23rd century, whenever it is. But I think I've seen, my background's in archaeology, and I've seen sometimes people who are academic historians or academic archaeologists who have it's not just that they're interested in the past. Some of them very much do want to live in it. And so you'll get people who are, you know, they'll know a lot about this stuff, but then they'll also like sometimes dress. They have certain things that they like more than other things. They might, you know, stay there studying Japanese history, and then they start like dressing like a certain kind of samurai group or something like that. Or there's a closeness that's a little bit sometimes unobjective and sometimes a little bit too close, where it's not just that you're interested in it, you want to be in it. You wish you were there, which can be sometimes helpful in giving you passion, but can also sometimes be a little off-putting. And so I think that she had that kind of bent where she wanted to be back there so badly that she was predisposed to basically fall in love with this guy. And there was one of the other things that was weird to me about this was that, you know, in Star Trek, in the original series, there's a little bit more sensuality and a little bit more sexuality with Kirk and, you know, him doing various stuff. Next Generation, a lot of that's just gone. But this one, the psychosexual dynamics are really weird and interesting in that Khan treats her almost semi-abusively, and she does kind of stand up to him at the end. She does stand up to him at the end. But there's also a lot of, did you catch that Kirk was jealous of her interest in Khan and kept kind of cloaking it and saying that he wasn't, but Bones was saying things like, well, are you interested in her interest in Khan professionally or personally? And he's like, professionally. But you can tell he's kind of miffed that she doesn't view him as being the adventurous, bold type, because, you know, he very much is.
Right.
But I think that there was almost a sexual jealousy there. And so that was part of his conflict with Khan in a, you know, as much as they could show in 1966 or whatever. But there was definitely some weird dynamics there that were interesting, you know?
Well, and I think this also does eventually in some way inform on what we see in Voyager later, because this is our first character in the quote-unquote present that worships some of the past. And we see that in Tom Paris quite a bit in Voyager, where he's all into the hot rods of the 50s and the radio plays and the black and white TV shows. And we see a lot of that correlation there. It gets built on a lot more because Tom Paris is a main character. But I think this starts that concept that there are people in the future that represent, that look back at the past, and everyone else considers them a little weird for it.
Well, I was thinking about this because there's...
It's eccentric.
Well, you've seen Demolition Man, right?
Yes.
Yeah, and so I mean that's a big deal in Demolition Man. But I was thinking about this because I started watching the beginning of Wrath of Khan after watching this, just to, you know, do a little bit of comparison. And there's an amazing moment at the beginning. It's, you know, it's Kirk's birthday and he's feeling depressed because it's, you know, he's getting old. And Spock gives him, I think, or maybe it's Bones. Someone gives him some I think like War and Peace, or I think it's War and Peace, and then
right.
I think, you know, they give him some other stuff, and Bones is saying, oh, well, you always liked older stuff and blah, blah, blah. And I was thinking that one of the reasons why, especially in Star Trek, because, you know, Picard's an archaeologist, and Sisko likes baseball and everything like that. Sometimes I think the writers like to make some of the characters really into, let me pick a random century, say the 20th century, as being super interesting to these characters, or, they're really into old literature, because they're never quoting, this 21st, 22nd century author. They're always quoting Dickens and Shakespeare and people that we know, but it gives them an in-character reason to be quoting them other than, everyone just still remembers what, Mark Twain was talking about, you know? When they wouldn't necessarily, because it's like, you know, go on some naval vessel and grab some ensign and be like, hey, are you really into the works of, you know, Edmund Spencer? And they'll be like, who is that? But, you know, in Star Trek, they'd be quoting, you know, the Fairy Queen all over the place. Like, you know, it's I think sometimes it's a writer's trick to, you know, make sense of why, you know, Khan and Kirk are yelling Moby Dick quotes at each other.
Yeah. Overall, I really enjoyed the episode. It felt clean and crisp. I missed a little bit of Sulu because we didn't get to see him.
Yeah, he's not in it.
But we got everybody else. Scotty gets to do a little bit of stuff, so he gets a little screen time.
It's also one of the big
Kirk,
plot
Spock,
holes.
McCoy.
One of the big plot holes in all of Star Trek is that, you know, Wrath of Khan, Khan's like to Chekhov, I never forget a face. I know you, Mr. Chekhov, or whatever. And it's like, Chekhov's not in this episode. He wasn't on the show.
Right?
Chekhov isn't even on the show yet. Yeah.
Walter Koenig has some sort of like weird story where he made up a headcanon of like using the bathroom before Khan and then like running out of toilet paper, not putting any in. And then that's why Khan like hates him or something.
Oh, good night.
Pretty good.
That's perfect. Yeah. So the episode itself is very solid. I think it paces very well.
The pacing
slows
is great.
down at a couple. It slows down at a couple of points, but to emphasize things and to really bring everything together, we get to see Kirk and Spock really try out Khan and get to understand him. Which, you know, if I were a captain and I found a ship, first I wouldn't bring the guy back and give him free reign of the ship, just period. I wouldn't let him read our technical manuals. That sounds dangerous.
Yeah.
But
it's also like, how much
really
could he understand in 200 years? So.
Well, I mean, he's hyper smart, so all of it.
But they didn't know.
Yeah, that's true.
I do like, though, early in the episode, Kirk is like, the SS Botany Bay, that was a penal colony. And Spock's like, that's ridiculous. They're leaping to conclusions here. That's a stupid idea. And it's like, no, he nailed it.
Yeah. I mean, why else would you call your ship Botany Bay?
Yeah.
Other than to have Chekhov later go, Botany Bay? Botany Bay? Yeah. So we we get the full treatment here. It's a solid episode as far as that stuff goes. The notable guest star here is Ricardo Montalban. He is phenomenal.
Yeah.
Fantasy Island. He's been a bunch of stuff. He passed away in 2008, but or 2009. I don't know. 2008, 2009. But he did a lot of voiceover work right before he passed. So he was in a lot of cartoons in the early 2000s. So that's kind of amazing. He was senior in Kim Possible. So, there's that. But he's a really solid actor. I really enjoyed him quite a bit in this.
Yeah, and Khan is one of the great television and film villains. Like, even if you don't, people know, I think a lot of people know Ricardo Montalban just from this. And, people who, and from Wrath of Khan. And that's all you need to see, like, his power as an actor. Like, it's really obvious and present, and it's memorable. And even if you never see him in anything else, you're like, yeah, Ricardo Montalban, I know who that guy is, and he's good. Because he's really good in this.
Yeah. Really, really pleased with him. Shirley, you watched Fantasy Island, I'm sure. Sounds like you did. So you've seen a lot more of him, but this is this like the pinnacle of Ricardo Montalban?
Well, I mean, you're speaking of two totally different acting methods,
Yeah,
he wasn't trying to, he was greeting guests to his island. He wasn't trying to, take over the world.
We didn't get the wrench Corinthian leather until 82.
Right. So it just, no, when I first saw this, or saw him acting as Khan, one, I was surprised, and two, I was just amazed by his ability to envelop the character as he did. Yeah.
The other guest star that we had that was pretty important, this is our first, other than Uhura, it's our first female on the ship that wasn't I guess we had the psychologist too.
Yes.
But this, McGivens had an actual rank, and that's not very often we see that. Played by Madeline Rue, who ironically played the spouse of Ricardo Montalban on Bonanza.
Wow.
Yeah, so they obviously work together occasionally, but she was pretty good. Her hair was terrible, but that's the 60s.
What was wrong with her hair?
It was huge and all up.
It was
and
soft.
Huge.
Soft and simple.
Soft
and simple. Remember, that scene was weird.
That was
weird.
That was the creepiest.
He also didn't
I just creeped out.
He didn't really alter her haircut, other than pulling out two bobby pins and having two strands down the back. But I'm like, it's still up. Like you didn't really do much there, Khan.
Well, he made it simple and soft.
Not really. I think that's the only thing Khan is not good at is hairdressing.
Yeah, clearly. Although I did like his weird hair. When it was down, it was
I spent a lot of time wondering whether that was a wig. Did you think that was a wig?
I think it
well,
was.
the thing is, as soon as I heard him, I was like, dude, Antonio Banderas. And then I saw his hair, and I was like, I wonder if that's the same as Antonio Banderas' hair.
Ironically, played Antonio Banderas' dad in Spy Kids.
Right. Right.
I don't know. It reminded me of Prince Adam from He-Man, how that his hair just sat in this weird, like, and it didn't move. It had no life to it.
Whoa.
But there was hair. It wasn't like Kirk's hair doesn't move, but it's clearly like sprayed down with shellac. But like Khan moved his head, his head did not move. His hair did not move at all. It was like a helmet. It was a helmet of hair, and then maybe that's why he wanted the soft and simple, because he had a helmet of hair.
Helmet of hair.
Yeah, his hair is fascinating.
Yeah, I don't know.
I could not figure out what was going on. But...
It may have been a wig.
Yeah, once he had it back, I think it looked all right. It's much better in Wrath of Khan.
Yeah, I think that's his real hair there, or at least looks like real.
He looks like a crazed, tanned Bernie Sanders in Wrath of Khan.
You know what?
Also super jacked.
Yeah, super jacked with his rich Corinthian
I don't think
leather.
that was his.
No. Okay, so
real
this is.
chest.
I had this conversation with someone earlier because this has
you
been.
And I talked about it at one point in time.
Well, I had this conversation with someone else this
conversation.
morning. Many people, because he's so clearly muscular in Wrath of Khan when he was, I don't know, he was 60 or something like that in his 60s.
Yeah.
A lot of people, there's a rumor that he had a prosthetic, chest piece, that there's no way he was that ripped when he was 61. And everyone who worked on the set is like, no, that was his actual, his musculature. We, changed the costume to show off his muscles because he looked so good. And he was a guy who just worked out, for most of his life until he was basically in a wheelchair, I think. Like, he's a dude who's in really good shape.
Yeah,
wow.
No kidding. Like, that was some buff. Yeah. I hope I look half that good when I'm 60.
Yeah.
Like, that's ridiculous.
Well, no, that's the thing. Is like, that's also like he has, as an actor, he brought a real physicality to the role, but also like the whole air around him, you really do believe, this guy could be like a superior, like well-designed being because he's convincing. Like, he seems pretty badass.
Yes.
Yeah. As far as strange races go, this is, the what they eventually call the augments, because this comes up later. They are interesting enough, but they're all human other than their augmentations. I guess this also, I didn't think about this. This also plays into Deep Space Nine, which we'll get to. Man, this is all over. Like, they really drew from this well a lot. Mm-hmm. Which is great. I'm not against that. But this was mostly humans and Spock. Like we always get humans and Spock.
Yep.
I kind of wish we had more like races.
Well, we'll get there.
Yeah. As far as recurring items go, Bones doesn't say anything about being a doctor and not something else, and he doesn't pronounce anybody dead.
Nope. He pronounces somebody almost dead.
Almost dead. Yeah. He'll be dead soon if we don't get him out of there.
Bones' moment when Khan is holding, first wakes up and is threatening him with the scalpel, and he just doesn't give him an inch and is just like, just cut my throat. You just go right there.
Like,
it was
what are you
really,
doing?
really a great character beat where it's like Bones is pretty badass, actually.
Yeah, the best place to do is right under the ear. You should probably target there. Like, he really was on top of that. I was very
and they were they weren't questions that were like, how do I destroy the ship? It was just like, where am I, whatever. And he's just like, he wasn't giving an inch. He's like, I'm not going to respond to this threat. It was really cool.
Yeah.
I want to be that badass.
One day. You've got some work to do. Get started on that. Right? So Kirk actually gets the opposite of getting the lady. The lady leaves the ship.
He loses the lady.
Yeah. Spock is irritatingly logical when he's like, oh, no, your hypothesis that is on really no basis other than the name of the ship? That's crazy talk.
That just seems illogical to me right there.
What,
it's
Spock
like,
saying that?
Yeah.
I think it's a reasonable
it's like
inference.
The biggest... Like, I'm not going off of anything emotional. Botany Bay is a penal colony. Guess what? There's this derelict ship that we don't know anything about.
I don't think you understand what logic is, young lady, because the whole
guess
thing.
not.
Yeah, no, that one was a little rough.
No, it's Kirk was making a logical inference, and Spock, I think, was just being whatever.
Yeah. There were no deaths in this episode. None. Can't count any. And then Uhura got beat on a little bit, and there was some fire in her eyes.
Ooh.
She called up the view screen, but she was gonna take it, but I think she would have killed the guy. Like,
I felt like there was gonna be a fight.
Great moment in that scene is when they all start getting gassed. You know, a lot of people just start dropping like chumps. Uhura's still trying to like do something with the communication board, and Scotty, like before he just straight up decks a guy immediately.
Yeah.
He just straight punches a guy and then runs out. Like, that's his first instinct is, we're getting gas, time to punch somebody. That made me laugh really hard.
I was impressed by Uhura's the acting from just her facial expression. She didn't get a lot of lines in this, but that look right after she gets hit is real powerful.
Yeah.
Real powerful. All right, so that kind of wraps us up as far as the episode goes. Shirley, out of 5 stars, what do you think of the movie or the episode?
I keep on holding back, but I think I'm going to give this a 5.
5? Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
I don't remember seeing this when I grew up watching it with my dad, but like this would fastly become one of my favorite episodes.
Excellent. All right, George, what about you?
Yeah, I'd give it a 5. I think that this is one of those episodes, because some of the great episodes in the original series do have pacing problems, or sometimes they don't get really going until like the second or third act. And this one's just really good all throughout. If anything, it kind of ends a little abruptly, but you've got great interplay. There's a little bit of something for everyone. There's a cool mystery at the beginning. There's some cool action at the end. There's a lot of character beats. So it's the kind of episode I think you can show it to pretty much anyone. Unless they're like totally against science fiction, they'll be entertained by it. I think it's and it's one of the all-time great ones with a great significance to Star Trek, period. So yeah, 5 out of 5.
Yeah. So we get no baby man-child thing, like we did in the Corbomite maneuver. Kirk doesn't get the lady. There's no real phaser fire here. I'm gonna have to go with a 1 out of. No.
What?
No, I'm kidding. No, the history for this episode, it sets us up with a little deeper look at what kind of history we're expecting for the Star Trek universe by talking about the eugenics works. I understand that they were way off on their years, but there's at least an interplay there that they're trying to set up something to explain how we came about in this future. We also see this branch off in so many other places. There are core concepts here that they use throughout, which I always appreciate. It gives what do you call that?
Scope?
No, it's a thing that they have in comics as well.
Continuity?
It gives a continuity. Thank you, George.
Whoa.
It gives a continuity that's really solid. It starts here, and I understand they're going to mess it up eventually because you can't keep this miniseries right all the way. But it starts here. It looks good. It only gets better. It sets up what I think is the best Star Trek movie.
Yeah.
By far. Wrath of Khan. I think that movie is short and sweet and to the point and really gets in there deep and hits it hard and goes home and leaves it alone. And then we get sequels of that, but, whatever. That happens. I really liked it. I enjoyed it quite a bit. I think, George, you're right. This is something you show to most anybody, and they're going to enjoy it. So, definitely a 5 out of 5.
Holy cow.
Yeah, well,
That's like a miracle.
I have a lot of thoughts on that. So our next episode is Taste of Armageddon. We're going to have Colin Bricker on for that from I forget the name of his podcast. I don't have that noted here.
Oh,
I'm really on top of
my
that.
Goodness.
Something movie Cavalcade and something else. I don't remember. He'll be here next week to talk to you about that. George, once again, where can we find you on the internet?
You can find me at the Chimples. You can also listen to my podcast at lizardpeopledearreaders.com, which I recommend you listen to because it's like sci-fi, like Star Trek's kind of a sci-fi thing. So if you like spaceships, we spend a lot of time talking about spaceships, and check it out.
Good stuff there. Yeah, so from all of us here at There Are Four Lights, thank you for listening, and we will talk to you guys next week.
And that'll do us tonight for
There Are Four Lights.
Remember, you can email us at therearefourlightspodcast@gmail.com or find us on Facebook at facebook.com/nerdsdomain, on Twitter at nerdsdomain, or over at our site, nerdsdom.com. Be sure to sign up for the newsletter while you're there. You can head over to iTunes and give us a 5-star rating. A big thanks to 5 Year Mission for their music. You can find them at 5yearmission.net. Don't forget you can support us at patreon.com/nerdsdomain. And check out our shirts at /loot.